Story 1. So this happened last weekend. I was flying out of JFK Airport in New York, also known as one of the worst airports in the US, trying to not catch the plague, double mask, yeah. When I was in the T line, I was surrounded by two families, a mom and her son behind me and two parents with two boys in front of me. The mom in front of me was tired, like she was sitting on a big carry-on bag, while her husband wheeled her about tired. Dad was so focused on mom not falling off the suitcase that the boys were just darting about and trying to play with the boy behind me as well. It's 6:30 am. I am on 2 hours of sleep, so the world is just too much for me. But I also worked at a special needs preschool for 2 years prior to becoming a therapist, so I know how to wrangle kids on minimal sleep. I go into crowd control mode, asking the boys about their interests, but reminding them we have to be quiet to talk about them. I find out the brothers are Eric, 9, and Daniel, 6, and they are really excited about going on a plane. The boys start having a quiet convo about Minecraft. The mom behind me thanked me, and we actually had a nice chat about me previously working in the special needs school and how fun it was. An hour and a half later, I am boarding my plane, and I see the tired mom like 5 rows back from where I was seated. She's at a window seat, and she's already passed out. I sit, and about 5 minutes later, I see the dad and two boys coming on the plane. The first kid, Daniel, sits down next to me, and Dad pauses for a moment just staring at me. After a minute, I'm just like, is something wrong? I kid you not. This man proceeds to take the boarding pass out of his second son's hand, swap it with his, and tell his son to sit in the aisle seat. He then bolts to the row his wife is in. Once the disbelief wears off, the boys start asking me questions about the plane and snacks and the TV mounted in front of them. I am so exhausted I don't even fight it. I show the older one how to turn on the TV screen on the seat in front of him and tell them, "Miss Me is really sleepy, like your mom, so I am going to take a nap." Both of them tell me to have a nice nap and I pass out. I wake up 2 hours later to my tray down with a mini water bottle and a bag of cookies on it. Apparently, my new friends thought I would want a snack when I woke up. Great kids. 30 minutes before we land, there's commotion behind us and what sounds like running. All of a sudden, formerly asleep mom is very much awake and looking over both kids to make sure they are all right. Both of them mention how they have been watching Mona, so they are perfectly fine. Mom then shoots her husband the neutral face of displeasure. If you don't know what that is, Google the fresh off the boat clip of it. When we get off the plane, Mom follows me to the bathroom to apologize. Apparently, she took some medication to help ease her anxiety with flying, but just knocked her. Can't be anxious if you unconscious, I suppose. Her husband was supposed to sit with the younger boy, while the older one sat with her. She freaked out when she woke up and saw her husband, and in her drowsy state, she thought her husband forgot the children back at JFK, hence her panic. Apparently her husband thought it was a good idea to leave them with me, because he heard me talking about working at a school and figured they would be fine with me. She apologized, and when we got out of the bathroom, she made her husband apologize for abandoning our children with a stranger. The whole walk out to the pickup area, she was reminding her children about stranger danger and how they need to be careful in big places like this. Daniel gave me a paper heart he folded out of a New York City brochure, so I have a new best friend now. Story 2. Background. As a food delivery driver, we are paid only from the time we accept a pickup up to the time we deliver to the given address. Anything beyond that will either be at our own personal expense or we have to call it in for pay adjustment. We are also not paid when waiting for the order to complete, so if an order takes some 30 minutes after you arrive, you don't get any pickup request and we can lose a lot of potential income because of it. The story. This just happened last night. I got a message to pick up Karen's pizza at a pizza place. This was at night. I got there, waited for another 5 minutes for the pizza to be cooked, then got boxed, and I was on my merry way. As I was checking out the delivery location, I noticed that it is a place that I have always noticed on my way that seems like a fancy apartment complex. Never delivered in that place yet. Off I drove and parked at the apartment. When I read again the address and the instructions, there was no apartment number, problem #1. So I thought that maybe she would be waiting for me at the lobby or she works at the front desk. When I got there, I saw 3 elderly ladies and thought one of them was Karen, but that is not the case. They were sweet ladies who tried to be helpful and also seemed to be interested to know the fellow resident, as none of them ever heard of anyone named Karen residing there. I called Karen, and this is the conversation from memory. Pardon me, as there was a point where I had no idea how it escalated from 0 to 100 in points in 1 sec. I marked my status as arrived by now to let the customer know. Hi Karen. I am here at the lobby of the address you gave, and you forgot to give me the unit number of your address. Karen, confused. Huh? What do you mean? I live in a house, not a building. You gave X address and I am here. She started raising her voice this time. That is my mother's address. Why did you deliver it there? This is the address that is written here in the order. Karen, still in a raised voice, that is wrong. You should deliver it to X, the right address. I do not know where that is, and I am not allowed to deliver it to a new address. Actually, if it was nearby, we can choose to do it. Otherwise, we can consider it failed to deliver, and we get the pizza and/or full pay for the delivery and tips. But her pizza is probably close to $10, and I only get some $7 pay for this. What do you want me to do? She asks. I will have to call it in with support and let them decide. At this point, I am already hesitant to continue this and just accept any loss. You are useless, idiot. She then hangs up. I was on speaker when I made that call, and the 3 ladies were shocked by what they heard. They just told me to keep the pizza and forget about it. They also commented on how she raised her voice, and also the useless and idiot comment. I just told them that I will just call support and take it from there, then bid the lovely ladies good night and left. As I got into the car, I called support and told them about it. Support puts me on hold and talked to Karen. So I talked to Karen, and she gave her correct address. I checked GPS and how far it is from my current location, then said, that is another 5.5 miles, and I already have a next pickup. Yes, and we will be adjusting your pay for this. This is the reason for these calls, and also to put any changes or incidents on record as part of covering ourselves from customers. Will you be able to make the delivery? No, I refused to make the delivery as she raised her voice, was rude and called me useless and idiot, and 3 other residents heard everything she said. Okay, I will just cancel her order. Okay, thank you. We then hung up. In the end, I got paid in full with her tips, and I got the pizza. As for Karen, I don't know what happened on her end. Either her pizza was completely canceled and she got her refund, or she had to wait another 30 minutes for her pizza. But this was close to closing, so I doubt it. Moral of the story, never get the people who have your food mad. Receiving your pizza cold is the kindest thing we could do for anyone who gets us mad. Story 3. My boyfriend and I had been planning this trip to Southern California for months. As food enthusiasts, we were particularly excited about visiting this famous apple pie shop that everyone raved about. The place was known for their incredible pies, and tourists would come from all over just to get a taste. I'd done my research beforehand, reading reviews and checking out photos. The shop had 2 separate lines, one for people wanting to buy slices and apple cider, and another exclusively for whole pies. It seemed pretty straightforward to me. When we arrived, the place was packed, which wasn't surprising for a weekend. We got in line for whole pies since that's what we wanted to bring back to share with our families. The staff member at the front was clearly announcing to everyone joining the queue that this was the whole pies only line. I appreciated their effort to keep things organized. After waiting for about 30 minutes in the hot sun, we were finally near the front. That's when this woman walked up and stood behind us. She must have heard the same announcement we did, but apparently it didn't register with her. When it was her turn to order, things quickly went south. Cashier, welcome. Which pie would you like to purchase today? Karen, I'll take 2 slices of the traditional apple pie and a large apple cider. Cashier, I'm sorry, ma'am, but this line is for whole pies only. The line for slices and cider is over there. Karen, what? No one told me that. There aren't even any signs. Cashier, we've been announcing it regularly to everyone in line. Karen, shut the fuck up and just serve me what I asked for. The cashier looked completely taken aback. I could see their hands trembling slightly as they tried to maintain their composure. The other customers in line started shifting uncomfortably, but no one said anything. That's when my boyfriend stepped in. My boyfriend, ma'am, we were all told multiple times that this line was for whole pies only. The other line is right over there. I've never seen someone's face turn red so quickly. Karen whipped around to face my boyfriend, her eyes practically bulging out of her head. Karen, who the hell do you think you are? Mind your own fucking business before I punch you in the throat. I instinctively grabbed my boyfriend's arm, not because I was afraid she'd actually do it, but because I've dealt with people like her before. They're like sharks. The more people engage with them, the more aggressive they become. The last thing we needed was for this to escalate into a physical altercation at a pie shop of all places. My boyfriend remained surprisingly calm, which just seemed to infuriate Karen even more. She started ranting about poor customer service and how she'd get everyone fired. Finally, a manager appeared. Manager, is there a problem here? Karen, yes, your staff is refusing to serve me, and this man is harassing me. Manager, ma'am, as stated multiple times, this line is strictly for whole pie purchases. If you'd like slices or cider, I'd be happy to direct you to the correct line. Karen, this is ridiculous. I'm never coming back here again. Manager, that's your choice. Now, I'm going to have to ask you to step out of line as you're holding up other customers. Karen stormed off, but not before shooting us one last death glare and muttering something about calling corporate. The manager apologized to everyone in line and gave us each a 10% discount on our purchases. As we walked back to our car with our pie, I couldn't help but feel proud of my boyfriend. He'd stood up for what was right without losing his cool or stooping to Karen's level. The pie, by the way, was absolutely worth the wait and the drama. Story 4. In 2008, I was newly married. I went to pick up my daughter after a tense altercation the previous day with my husband. That afternoon, we had just discovered that we had suffered a miscarriage, so we wanted to get my daughter and go home. My daughter was just over 1 year old at the time, so I had to physically pick her up and carry her. She could walk, but it was easier to carry her to the car. That's when my ex-boyfriend started yelling awful things. He called me disrespectful names and accused me of being unfaithful for getting married so soon after our breakup. We had broken up 2 years prior, long before I even knew I was pregnant with our daughter. He also claimed that I needed to get control over my chaotic lifestyle, which, for the record, consisted of working as an assistant preschool teacher while taking college classes to become a lead teacher. My husband was standing near the trunk of the car when I turned to put my daughter in. Of course, I couldn't help but respond. My ex-boyfriend's mother was the definition of entitled, demanding, and self-important in every way imaginable. As my ex-boyfriend continued ranting about what a terrible person I was, I turned and snapped. At least I wasn't raised by someone completely unhinged. Just be quiet and leave me alone. I turned back around to buckle my daughter into her car seat when I suddenly heard commotion behind me. My ex-boyfriend and his father had attempted to rush toward my car while my back was turned. My husband stepped between us and started recording everything on his phone. My ex-boyfriend's mother called the police, claiming that my husband had attempted to assault her son. But because my husband had recorded the whole incident, it was my ex-boyfriend and his father who got in trouble. I ended up filing a restraining order because, even with the police present, my ex-boyfriend attempted to charge at me with a tool in his hand. He and his father had been changing a tire on his car when I arrived, so he had grabbed something from their tools before coming at me. A week later, my ex-boyfriend was supposed to meet me near a well-known fast food restaurant to pick up our daughter for a 6-hour visit, which was all he was permitted during the first stage of the restraining order. The pickup time was set for 10 a.m. I arrived at 9:45 a.m. and checked in with the officer assigned to monitor the exchange. He was a wonderful sheriff's deputy from that town. We sat outside the restaurant, talking and exchanging stories about our churches. It turned out he had grown up with my mother. He even bought me an iced tea and my daughter a juice while we waited. When my ex-boyfriend hadn't arrived by 10:30 a.m., the sheriff's deputy called him to inform him that, because he failed to show up, he was forfeiting his time with our daughter. The deputy then instructed me to go ahead and leave since I had a long drive back home, 45 minutes one way. About 20 minutes into my drive home, I received a call from the sheriff's office. They asked where I was and why I hadn't waited for my ex-boyfriend to pick up our daughter. I explained that the deputy had dismissed me after we waited 30 minutes past the scheduled pickup time. They told me they would confirm with the deputy, but wished me a good day. I thanked them and continued home. Something was definitely going on because later, I got another phone call asking me to return to the drop-off location so my ex-boyfriend could have whatever limited time was left in his visit with our daughter. I told the deputy that we were already home, and since it was just about noon, I was preparing lunch and getting my 1-year-old ready for her nap. The deputy said he understood, but in the background, I could hear someone screaming. That evening, the sheriff's deputies called again, telling me that due to an incident, they were now requesting a restraining order on behalf of both my daughter and me against my ex-boyfriend's mother as well. They didn't go into detail, but I would find out soon enough. Our hearing was scheduled for 2 days later. I sat in shock as the allegations were read, knowing that I hadn't committed any of the acts being described. My lawyer quickly informed the judge that I was not the person responsible for what had happened. It was, in fact, my ex-boyfriend's mother. Apparently, I had missed a lot. When the deputy called me that first time from the sheriff's office, it was because my ex-boyfriend's mother had stormed in, demanding that I be arrested for kidnapping. She claimed that I had not shown up at the designated meeting location for the exchange and that she couldn't contact me because of the restraining order, which at that time only applied to her son. Then, after the second call, when the deputy informed her that I had already left, she completely lost control. She punched the protective glass between herself and the deputy, screaming that she was going to contact the mayor and demanding to speak with the highest-ranking officer in the department. When she didn't get her way, she tried to physically attack another deputy for not immediately issuing a warrant for my arrest. She had to be placed in handcuffs and put in a holding cell to calm down. It didn't stop there. While in custody, she made terrifying threats against me. She described in disturbing detail how she could harm me in my sleep and get away with it. She even told the officers that she would love to see my child suffer the way she believed I was making her precious son suffer. She then claimed that she knew I was manipulative and always managed to escape consequences. After all of that, she suddenly asked for a Bible so she could pray for the demons plaguing the corrupt sheriff's office. It took 6 hours for her to calm down enough to be released, but she was warned that she would be closely watched and immediately arrested if she attempted any further contact with me. During the hearing, 3 officers testified that I had followed all the legal guidelines and had been fully cooperative. They also expressed their concern that my ex-boyfriend's mother might not be able to control her violent outbursts, especially if she were near me or my daughter. The judge agreed. I was granted a restraining order and full custody for 6 months. As for my ex-boyfriend, he was still allowed visitations every other weekend, but there were strict conditions. My husband was the only person permitted to pick up and drop off my daughter, and my ex-boyfriend was prohibited from having any direct contact with me, except through email. His mother, on the other hand, was ordered to stay at least 50 feet away from both me and my daughter. She was also required to attend anger management courses in an effort to improve her behavior. My ex-boyfriend's entire family was furious. Since he still lived with his mother, he had to move in with his grandmother to exercise his visitation rights. The court required him to provide proof of his change in residency before his visits could begin. And in case you're wondering, those anger management classes didn't make much of a difference. She's still as entitled and unreasonable as ever. Story 5. My sister's mother-in-law is one of those women who believes that giving birth makes her an expert on everything, and believes that being kinder related through marriage makes her an authority over me. Today, I'd like to introduce Reddit to the story of how she took over the family vacation. When my daughters were 1 and 3, my family contacted me about this great idea to have a family vacation in my mother's hometown, a 6-hour drive. They got to work on planning it right away. They excitedly drew up a plan to rent a van so that we could all travel together. They found a weekend rental that could accommodate us all, etc. I have to admit, it sounded pretty good. I started thinking that it sort of, might be normal. How wrong I was. 2 days later, they discovered that doing everything at the last minute rarely works in your favor and called to tell me some bad news. The only van they could get was 1 seat short, and someone had to go. Not being fit enough to fight over it gladiator style, they held a vote instead and, shockingly, decided that it should be me. I had some reservations, so they pointed out that I hadn't had any time away from my children since they were born and deserved some time to myself. Suspicious. After some consideration, I let them go, because my sister is a super responsible person, and I trusted her to make sure the kids were okay. I underestimated the floppiness of her spine though, not knowing that a spine could end up in a state that could be best described as mostly melted jello. They were sending me pictures of the happy vacation. Phone check-ins were great, and everything seemed to be going well. Until I noticed that every single person who was supposed to be there were all in the same photo together, at a remote fishing spot, when supposedly nobody else was around. Who was taking the pictures, you ask? Well, it was Dark Helmet. She had decided that there was no way that she could be away from her 3 grandbabies for a little over 48 hours. She'd rather die, and demanded to go. When they added Dark Helmet's husband and son's votes to those of everyone in my family, except me, it was a 9-0 decision in her favor. I thought I would cosplay at being a sensible adult and not start anything while they were still vacationing, and enjoyed the rest of my time off. You didn't think it would end there, did you? They needed to drop my children off in enough time for them to get ready to go for a scheduled visitation with their father, and were running a little late. I went outside to meet them, ready to swoop in and make sure they were presentable. They pulled up in my parents' car, a 5-seat sedan. It had 6 adults and 5 children in it, and there were no car seats in sight. I got into a fighting stance. They broke out into excuses the minute they saw the expression on my face. The rental was too expensive. That's why we left you out. We knew you wouldn't go unless we had car seats. This is why everything ends in a fight. You're so irrational. You're trying to ruin a beautiful memory. You're not a grandmother. You wouldn't understand. Blip blap bloop, bluoppity bleep. They all started to talk over each other so that they could be the hero that makes Tatter see reason. So it was a little hard to decipher. I took a deep breath and said, "You will never take my children on a trip without me again. Leave now, and do not even try to speak to me unless I reach out to you, any of you." That's when it went nuts. There was a lot coming at me, but my parents were the biggest possible threat, so I focused on them. I had no right to keep them from their grandchildren. They were going to call the cops and Child Protective Services. They had grandparents' rights, and the courts would give them access anyway. I dared them to go ahead, and that's when Dark Helmet decided that the best way to proceed was to cry hysterically, accusing me of being a selfish monster who was trying to destroy her relationship with her grandbabies. I told her to shut up and move to usher the kids inside. She grabbed onto my oldest daughter's arm, trying to pull her away from me. "She's not going with you until you calm down. I'm afraid for her safety," apparently forgetting the other one standing right next to her, whose safety she didn't seem to care about at all. I had to disengage her claws before I could pick up my daughters and walk inside. They stayed outside for almost a half hour, either comforting each other over all the drama I caused or performing a black magic ritual. I'm not sure which. They called the house phone and cell phone every few minutes, and I could hear the roar from outside whenever it went to voicemail. They tried to recruit a few of my neighbors, who had come outside to find out what was going on, and a couple of people passing by, wanting anyone around to join in on the fun. I heard from a reliable source later on that they all went back to Dark Helmet's house and whined about me until after midnight. They were even forced to order a huge expensive meal at a restaurant, because I had upset them so much that nobody felt like cooking. I was stealing money from their pockets. It took a while to die down, and they finally resigned themselves to knowing they did their best with me, and I turned out horrible despite their best efforts. And that's the story of how Dark Helmet took my place in the family vacation. Story 6. So this is an old story from a long time ago, when I was still a child with lots of energy. I think I was about 10 or 11 when this incident happened. I remembered this day because it was something outstanding that I just couldn't forget. I am also constantly reminded of it and just remembered about it today and thought, why not share this story? So my dad used to work in a restaurant as a chef. Now this restaurant was owned by one of my dad's friends of the same ethnicity, and almost all of the employees in the restaurant are of the same ethnicity as me. We are such a close, tight community that everywhere I go, I am bound to meet someone from that community, and we treat each other like family. So if I meet an older lady or man from my community, I refer to them as auntie or uncle in our native language. One day, my mom decided it would be nice to go out to eat instead of cooking and dragged one of my older brothers, me and my younger sister. When we arrived at the restaurant where my dad works, we were greeted with a loud, warm welcome in our native language. Now, as a child, you can expect I will be bored instantly, and the phone at the time was a brick phone, so there wasn't any YouTube or games to play. All I had was my younger sister, who was busy playing with her stuffed rabbit, and older brother to talk to, which also got boring at some point. So being a kid, I decided to look around the restaurant and shyly say hi to any of the customers when I made eye contact with them. When suddenly I bumped into a lady, this really tall lady with long blonde hair and narrow blue eyes looking down on me with a sour expression. At the time I was scared of any adults with a mean expression towering over me, so I began to cry. I called out for my mom in my native language, and here is when the terrible exchange happened. Karen. Oh my God, what's wrong with this child? Is she broken or something because she's speaking gibberish? Mom runs and picks me up while speaking in our native language. It's okay, calm down, we'll eat some yummy food in a second, so stop crying. Karen. Oh my God, even the mother is speaking gibberish. Karen snaps her long twinkling fingers at my mom. Speak American, otherwise your child will never grow up to survive in this country. Don't you know everyone can speak American, except for you? Racial slur? I also want to note we don't live in America, because our country is a mainly English-speaking country, and for some reason, Karen assumed English was American. My mom was confused because her English isn't perfect, and the Karen spoke really fast before she could even translate it in her head. Everyone in the restaurant, including the customers, looked mad already. One of the chefs from the kitchen walked out. We will name him Uncle Roger. Uncle Roger, in terrible English, get out. Karen, excuse me? Get out. You are not welcome, you terrible lady. Karen laughs. Oh my God, speak properly, you racial slur. I have a lot of money, so you need to shut up. I can use this money wherever I want and make them rich, thanks to me, so shut up and get to work, racial slur. You are not welcome here, so get out. She scoffs a laugh. You racial slur, shut up and get back to the kitchen and make me some food. You racial slur should just shut up and do your low minimum wage jobs and make me my food. You should be thankful people like me are providing you people with income, so hurry up and make me my food. An elderly lady around her 60 or 70 came from the back of the store with a tight, wrinkled, mean expression, and we'll name her Grandma Sophie. Grandma Sophie, in good English, I am the owner of the store. Get out. We don't welcome you here. Excuse me, I am a customer. Are you pushing away a potential customer? I do not care. Get out, you racist. Gradually, all of the employees, even those that aren't of the same community, yelled at her to get out of the store in perfect English, since the majority of them are young and are studying English compared to the older uncles, aunties, grandmas, and grandpas. A tall, bald white man, who is one of the customers, gets up from his seat and looms over Karen and yells in her face to get out of the store right this instant, or he will call the cops. This irked Karen until finally she gave up and left. Outside the store were some other ladies who followed close behind Karen, but they didn't do anything and just watched. After they left, all the adults looked at each other happily. Grandma Sophie called the tall white man over for a warm smile and embrace, and told him and his family didn't have to pay for their meal because it was on the house as a thanks for helping. I was a kid at the time and was still confused about what just happened, but all I knew was that I was happy that it ended with the Karen leaving. After that incident on that very same day, because of how close our community is, the words of this incident spread like a wildfire. Everyone knew in a second, thanks to the use of brick phones. Everyone in the community kept an eye out for this lady, and they actually managed to spot her. Also because the Grandma Sophie, Uncle Roger, and the other members of the community ensured everyone took a good look at her face from afar. If they saw her on the streets, they made sure other members took a good look at her and warned them about her. Because of how huge our community was, you can guarantee that in a street of restaurants and stores about 70% of them has a member of our community, whether they own the business or they work there. Since it was obvious that Karen was an American and was visiting our country for holiday, a lot of the members made Karen's holiday miserable. Whenever she would enter the store, she would be told to leave and was quickly banned from the store. Of course, Karen threw a fit about it, but she can't do anything when there's a lot of us ganged together. If she tries to say anything racist towards one of the members quickly, they would shout "racist" over her words and would silence out her mean words. If any members passed by her on the streets, they would chuckle and speak in English loudly about what she did to taunt her and would always hint that she's racist. This would always get a reaction from her, and she would often try to verbally fight them. But her friends or family would always stop her before she caused any more damage. Once she left to go home, the community gathered together at someone's house and talked badly about her, and what they contributed to make her holiday terrible, and how happy they were that the witch left in a terrible mood. We still talk about Karen today over some beers or wine. Everyone remembers it as if it was just yesterday. I didn't remember all the details well since I was a kid, but thanks to the members of my community, I always get refreshed on that day, and thanks to that I am able to share this story. Hope she doesn't visit our country again. Edit. To some of the people that loves Grandma Sophie, thanks for your love, but unfortunately she passed away a year ago due to a faulty heart. She's one of those mean but warm grandmas. She would often yell at troublesome kids, and she's those typical, "get off my lawn" grandma, but she would always yell out of the goodness of her heart whenever we caused troubles. On her deathbed, she still told us off and said, "If I see any of you guys in the afterlife shortly after me, I will learn some sort of martial art and show you what a beating looks like."